Welcome, guys, back to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I'm thankful to have Allie with me today. Allie, in her day to day, runs a pet sitting business. Today, we will discuss Allie's life story and her mental health story. Allie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thankful to have you on. For the people that don't know you, why don't you give us some context, like take us back to the beginning, where you grew up, your family situation, and maybe what type of kid you were.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I grew up in Kazakhstan, and there's a little city called Karaganda, and I was a pretty quiet kid, but I was very mindful of my surroundings because so much happened. And I guess I'll start from like what I remember, and it goes all the way to age of 2. And pretty much, I had an older brother whose name was Marat, and he was around 21 when he passed away. And
Sorry.
I, thank you, I remember just seeing his entire body become like stiff and just fall to the ground, and he pretty much like died right in front of me. And it was during his um like wedding party, because he had just gotten like married to this woman that no one, like, none of us knew. She like, the party was just, it had to happen. And our father was very in control because he was a police, he was a cop, and he pretty much was always about telling us how things would happen and how they would need to turn out. So he was like, "We're having this party. We don't know her, but it's gonna happen." So his son dies in front of us, and pretty much he got poisoned by her, and no one did anything about it because no one could really prove it. But I just remember that story being told from my mother, and I remember when I heard it, everything like clicked together. Like these pictures came out of nowhere, and I guess the trauma, since I was so little, just got shut down as I got older. But pretty much, what when I turned like 4, my mother had a lot of men come in and out of our house because after my older brother passed away, our father left. He just didn't want to be there anymore because the only people that were left were me, my mother, and his youngest son, who was I think around maybe like 13 or like 10 or something. But he left, and then when I was like 4, my older brother Ruslan, who was around 15, he ended up leaving the house. He just couldn't be there anymore because my mother was drinking. She wouldn't be able to afford food, so she would make me go out and like catch cats, and she would like boil them and like turn them into food. And I just remember I never ate a cat because having to have that job, it just made me just turn into a total different person. Like every single time I felt like she was eating me for some reason, because she wasn't providing food, she wasn't providing like safe space for me to be a kid. And yeah, I just became obsessed with cats, and I tried to, instead of bringing them in, I would try to find them homes and try to find them food. And I would just come home empty handed, and I would just like get like my ass beat pretty much. And at the end of the day, I still like loved her. But uh around that time, she had a man that came into her life, and he was like very um he would always come back. Like, she had other people come in and out, but they never stayed, but he stayed. And then they had a baby, and that's my little brother. His name is Marat, who she named after my oldest brother who passed away. And Marat's father was very abusive. And when he was just like an infant, my mother would be half the time just like wasted, like not present whatsoever. And she wouldn't be able to like take care of him. So I would need to step in as like that 4-year-old to like holding a baby, like telling it to shh and not crying. He would be always like crying all the time. And there was just this one night that really stuck to me, and I'll never forget it. But I had Mara like next to me, and he was asleep, and my mother, she was like right beside us on the bed, and we were sleeping on the floor. And Marat's father just like wiggled his way down to the floor and just like started spooning me and just like touching me. And I couldn't make a peep, because if I did, Marat would wake up, and he was such a crybaby. Like, he would cry all the time, but it made sense because he just wanted that, motherly love. So I just didn't make a noise, and I just like took it. And I tried to tell my mom, and she didn't believe me. She said that I was like lying, that I wanted attention because I always get that attention. And she, like, when those men that would come in and out, they would always look at me a certain way, and she would blame me for making them look at me a certain way. And then she'd just like scream. It was awful. But pretty much Marat's father started picking up just really angry attitudes out of nowhere. And he started taking it out on Marat because he just cried a lot. He needed to be fed, but he wasn't getting fed. So he would pick him up and throw him across the room. And like I said, he was just an infant, and he would starve him. And yeah, it was just really bad. But we had days where she would just like give us some bread, but I would always just give it to Mara. And I remember when I was just like 4 or 5, I was so hungry that I was going through her empty vodka bottles and just like trying to sip that, because that kind of like depressed my like appetite, because my belly would be like burning and I would just feel woozy. And yeah, it worked back then.
Yeah.
And then when I was like around 5, my mother got pregnant again by this man, and she had the baby. And she named it Anya in Russian. And yeah, Mart's father, he again just like couldn't handle it, like with all the kids yelling and stuff, and he pretty much killed her. He threw her and hit her so badly one day that he just killed the child. And yeah, and
Wow.
then
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
we
Wait,
have some
this is
coffee.
this is
This
your
this
sister.
Yeah, this is my younger sister, my half
Okay.
sister.
Yeah.
So we like buried her, and he didn't get into trouble. Like, back then, no one really got into trouble about anything.
Wow.
Like, there was just so much homelessness going on with just people and animals. And like, literally, there would be people that had a little more money, they could afford like bigger animals to like feed off of. So like you would see horses tied up on the street with like men with guns up shooting them, and that's their food. Um, but yeah, it was a weird, scary time. And pretty much around like 6, I ended up going to an orphanage. My mother, I remember she was like holding my little brother Marat, and she pretty much told me, I I am sick right now, and I really just I can't take care of you. So you are going to go somewhere where they will take care of you and you'll be okay. And I was like, okay, like, are you going to come visit me? And she was pretty much like, yeah, I will. I'll bring you ice cream. And I was like, okay. And I went to this place. Well, first off, it was like this van that had like 6 seats in the back, and they were filled with other kids, and there were like 2 cops in the front, and they take us to this. It was like an it was like a huge like pool auditorium type of thing, but the pool was empty. And what they had inside the pool were just like naked kids being washed by these like there were like these sprinklers that would come out from like the walls, and they were just like hit us all, and we would be just like needing to rub ourselves really quick. So when I came in, I saw that, and like I had to get in there, wash myself. And I'm telling you, there were over, like, I don't even know how this was legal, but there were over like 80 kids in this one room just being washed. And then we were all taken to like a different room where there were just like these is twin bed like the smallest bed, or
Uh,
is it single bed?
yeah, I think probably twin. Yeah,
Twin. So pretty
everybody's
much
bits. Yeah,
they're just like very small beds, like only one person could fit, and they were like all
yeah.
in a row. And before we got taken to that bedroom for all, we were taken to like this small room. We made a line, and pretty much we were buzzing all of our hairs, like heads off. And my hair at the time was so long, and I was like a cute little kid. Like I did catch people, like their heads would always turn. Um, and this one woman cop who like just caught interest in me for no reason. I really don't know why. Um, she picked me out of the group, and she's like, this little girl isn't getting her hair cut. Like, no one's buzzing her hair. And they were like, she has to. Like, these kids might have lice. We don't have time to go through them all. Like, we just need to cut it. And they're like, no, she kept trying and trying. And then eventually they just buzzed my head, and we all went into this like bedroom. Yeah, so that was like the first stage where all of the orphans go before they actually get put into an orphanage. And it was very messed up, but they chose kids by um by how much family or siblings they had left, and by their looks. So they would throw like kids that were also much older, they would throw into like bad orphanages where they know that they would just like not get adopted or chosen. And they put me into this very great orphanage who was known to like pretty much thrive with like other people coming in to adopt these kids. So I and this woman also pressed these people to put me into this nice place. And I remember she herself took me to it, and she just like wished me luck and this and that. And I still was wondering, I remember, like, when is my mom coming? Like, when is she bringing me the ice cream? I
Mm,
was really
mm,
confused what
yeah.
was going on. But they put me into this room, which had like a bunk bed, 3 bunk beds. And this girl that I was sharing my bunk bed with, her name is Katya. We became really good friends. And pretty much I was in the orphanage for like, I'd say maybe like a year and a half, maybe a year. But it was a nice place. I made friends. I went to school, and like some weird things did happen. And some of the weird things were there was this like 16-year-old boy that like woke me up in the middle of the night, and he like took me to the bathroom, and he like told me to like undress myself. And I said no. Like I was away from my mom, like I was away from her different men that she would have. Like I finally was like alone, and I felt like I had to do something. So for the first time I was like no. And he was like, I'm gonna kill you if you don't undress yourself. I was like, no. And he was like, fine. And he let me leave the bathroom, and I just went straight into my sleep. And then the next morning, my friend Katya came to me, and she's like, Allie, like this guy he pretty much chose her, and she couldn't say no. And he raped her in the bathroom. And yeah, she was like my age. She was like 7,
Man.
6.
Yeah.
And pretty much I told her, I was like, you have to say no next time this. And she was like, but I was scared. He said he was going to kill me. And I was like, next time, just don't. But then this orphanage was a little odd in some ways, but maybe I've only been to one, so I can't really judge it to others. But they would make us, they taught us very proper behaviors, like at a table, how to clean up after yourself. But they would force us to finish everything on our plate. And if you don't finish everything on your plate, you can't leave the table. And pretty much if you're the last one to like not, if you're not finishing your food, you're going to do everyone's dishes. But the thing is, they like everyone finishing their food, everyone doing their own dishes, and then you go and have TV time. And if you didn't finish your food, or let's say you didn't make your bed, they will punish you and tell you to go stand in the corner and bend your knees like you're squatting, and have your arms all the way out holding like 5 heavy books. And they'd be like, hold it for like 3 minutes. But sometimes they just like wouldn't come back. And like I'm a kid, I can't hold that many
Yeah.
books. So then they
Yeah.
would just like give you more chores to do and make you like clean the bathroom or clean the bathtub, or like just a lot of like labor work. It was
Yeah.
weird. But I remember when I got there, I prayed. I was not a religious person whatsoever, but I prayed every single night when I got there to see my mother come and bring me ice cream, because that's what she told me.
Mm.
So my prayers didn't get answered at all. But one night she called the orphanage, and I spoke to her like 3 a.m. in the morning, and she told me that she will come visit me, and she misses me, and she like will see me at some point. So I was like so happy to hear from her, and I was like, oh my
Mm.
god, like God really did hear me. And I kept praying and nothing from then. But I got pulled into this room where it was like very like, we don't go anywhere besides school, our bedroom, the kitchen, the TV room, the stairs where you have to go to exit the building to go to school. So this room is like an office with like a desk and a chair and like books. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And they were telling me that there is like a family interested in me, and they're going to come and visit me. And I was just like, okay. and you couldn't really say anything back because they drilled it into you that this is your like way out of there. Like, this is your new start. Like, you get a mom and dad. And I was just like, okay. And pretty much my my adoptive mother, she came out to visit me, and I was around like 7. She came out to visit me, and she bought me so many toys, so many Barbies, teddy bears, hair clips, like anything that a little girl would want. She literally got it for me. And I was so happy, and I totally like I remember I got distracted at some point with like all of these gifts. And she also came with my sister, my older sister, my adopted older sister. And we clicked immediately. Like, I really felt like I just wanted to go home with them right then and there. But they were only with me, I believe, for like a week or two, and they got to take me off campus, and like I stayed with them in this like house that they got there, and we had like a translator, so we got along so well. And then when they had to leave, they left me with all the toys and stuff. And when I got back to the orphanage, every single gift that I got from them, I had to give it away to other kids. I had to share pretty much. Nothing was mine. Nothing there was anyone's. Like, no one had a belonging that they could be like, no, that's mine. Like, our clothes were shared, our underwear was shared, like everything was shared. Our shoes were shared, everything. Like the boys and the girls, not just like one sex.
Yeah.
So yeah, the toys went to everyone else, and then this family was very interested in me, and they kept sending me more gifts. And these people in the orphanage just like didn't have any sympathy for like the children's sleep. So they would wake me up at like 4 a.m., 2 a.m., 1 a.m. to be like, oh, here's a package. Like, I feel like they were more excited than I was, because they didn't care what time of day it was. They woke me up, they put me in front of a pretty wall, and they would make me hold a box of like the package that I have. And I still have all of these pictures of like me in my little robe, or me in like my big t-shirt, just like holding a package at like 2 a.m. with like messy hair. Like, honestly, it looks like one of those photos where a person gets abducted and they're just like, oh
Yeah.
I was just out of it. And yeah, pretty much I ended up going there around when I was like 8. And then I spent like 4th of July with them. I met other kids that.
This is in the US.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And at this time, so this was in California, and I wasn't the only one who came out. There were like a set of other kids that came too, because they found parents also. So there was like a group of us that were coming out. So like I got to talk to them and find out their opinion on this. And everyone was excited, and I was excited too after our first altercation. So I had a great time with them. I wanted to stay. I don't remember this, but my mother now says that I was crying and I didn't want to leave when I had to leave. But while I was there, and while I was loving my time there, I couldn't fully enjoy it without my little brother. Like, I knew that he was still out there. So through the translator, I told her I have a little brother, and sorry, my cat, Thomas.
You're good.
I was like, I have a little brother, and he is out there. I really want like him to be with me. And my mother was like, you on your file it says that you're a single child. And the thing is, what the orphanage did, like I told you earlier, like they had to lie and pretty much list me as a single kid because they knew that my birth mother was actually dying. She died from breast cancer.
Mm.
So she ended up giving Mara up for adoption too. So yeah, my present mother, my adopted mother, Laura, she was like, well, let's find this kid. Like, if she says that he's out there, he must be out there. She she went all the way back to Kazakhstan to just like talk to them to try to find him. They kept being like, no, no, no. And then finally they were like, oh, well, we did find him, but he's gonna die and it's just not worth it. And she was
Mm.
like, oh, he is worth it. Like, you give him to me. And they were like, you have to pay this amount to literally give a child up. So she
Yeah.
pays that amount. And then on top of that, before that, she was like, why is he going to die? And they were like, well, he was so like beat up badly by his father that he just didn't have a chance of living. And the doctors in Kazakhstan weren't that qualified to like
Yeah.
help him out the way that they needed to. So my mother, she pretty much paid the money that they asked for. She got access to him. She like pretty much shipped him somehow to the United States, and the American doctors got to work on him. And he had a lot of like brain damage, and um he has his left side like paralyzed, so he can't really use his like arm, but he uses his other arm perfectly, and he's done every single sport that any other kid has done. He's done
Wow.
horseback riding, gymnastics, dance. Like, he's a very talented young kid. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I had to go back to Kazakhstan to until they had to finish all the paperwork. But he went to America and he stayed there. And then when I arrived, I didn't know that he was going to be there. So it was like a surprise.
Yeah.
And I was very happy. And pretty much around um, like 13, I'd say, I started like getting mood swings, and I was starting to be very like angry, kind of like not wanting to smile. Um, my mother would always need to do something like crazy beside the photographer in order to like make me smile, because we would do these like Christmas cards or like family photos, and she would literally like pull her pants down and just like moon us, or she would like fart, or she would like pretend
Yeah.
to start licking the photographer's face. Like, she would go overboard to make me laugh,
Yeah.
and it would work. um but eventually it just like did not, and I just didn't feel easily fooled by all these things. um so should we take a break for a minute?
Yeah. Yeah. We can take a break.
Okay, so I was like 11 when I was starting to get kind of moody. I I now pretty much have an older sister, an older brother, and a younger brother. And my older brother, so we were only 3 years apart. And so I was 11, he was like 14, and he would be such a bully. but I honestly think that's just like what big brothers do. But he would step into the role of pretty much a father and a big brother because I didn't have a dad. So he would be very judgmental over my fashion taste. And I, at the time, loved to wear very short shorts or like tank tops with my tits pushed up. And he just did not agree that that was an 11-year-old way. So sometimes he would put me in like a headlock or like tell me to tap out. And like when I did, he would still like hold me in a headlock and like give me like just a lot of pain I suffered
Mhm.
with him. And it was all jokes, but I think it did kind of make me very angry in a way because whenever I did go to my mother and say, "Oh, he did this, he farted in my face," she wouldn't do anything to him. She would instead say, "Allie, go to your room." And I'd be like, "Why?" Like I didn't do anything. And she would just go to your room. She would punish me without ever telling me exactly what I did. And Thomas, no, she would say, no, she would say, um, because I'm the mother. Like that would be her way of telling me to stop asking
Mm.
why. And I would pretty much go to my room all the time. And then at some point, I remember I hid for an entire day on my bunk bed in my room that was covered with a ton of stuffed animals. I became like a hoarder of stuffed animals. So
Mm.
I would have so many that I hid under, and my nannies that I had at the time, they were all just running around the house being like, "Where's Allie? Where's Allie?" And my mom would be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Like, she's probably somewhere." Like, and I think I was testing to see, like, does anyone care? And that was like proof to me that really no one did. And I just kind of started to like isolate myself. And I grew up on like a ranch. We had 6 goats, 6 chickens, a horse, and then we got a miniature pony. We had a turtle. We had baby chickens that I had to raise at some point. Um, 5 dogs, 4 cats, fish, snakes, mice. We had a zoo,
Yeah.
birds,
Yeah.
um, and I really love that. And I think that's one of the things that like really helped me not feel actually like so alone and dead inside. So I would always escape and be out there like at the barn with them or with my turtle on our like play structure that we had beside. It was a great escape. But then um once we moved to New York when I was like 15, things kind of shifted because I didn't have nannies that were driving me around and they were there 24/7. Meanwhile, my mother never was. Um, she spent half of her, I mean, most of my like years while when I came to America in her bedroom. I didn't know until like later, until I was probably like 17 or 18, that she was just high and drunk every single day, just passed out in her bedroom. And I didn't know that either until way later because my nannies eventually told me that she would ask them to go get so many bottles of Xanax like picked up from the pharmacy, and like they would see like bottles of booze just like empty in the closet. And yeah, so this move to New York like totally shifted like my relationship with my mother. because I didn't have nannies at this point. I was 15. I didn't want them. New York City also makes you so independent with like the subways and easy access to transportation that I just became an adult immediately. And um, it was hard adjusting from California to New York, especially with like friends.
Yeah.
And I went to a private school, so there was like a competition in a way.
Mm.
This private school had a lot of like celebrities' children and like just well-known people's kids and parents that would be coming by, and like others would be starstruck, and it was just a lot of like in the spotlight type of thing. So I started kind of isolating myself freshman year with just sticking to one friend, and we did the same things together. We liked the same things. We just stuck together. Um, but New York really made me see things in such a more sharpened way of what I wanted, but not of what I needed. So I would see these like skinny girls, these like perfect girls on the street, and I would just obsess with their like a weight and how they looked, and that's how I wanted to look. So pretty much I started restricting. I didn't want to eat. I pretty much kept it very private. I even changed my entire style to like baggy clothes and sweaters, and no one really noticed until I was in Pennsylvania visiting my aunt with my mother. And one night she walked in on me while I was throwing up my dinner, and she got mad. She got so mad. She was like, "What are you doing? This is not okay. Why would you do this?" She asked pretty much all the questions that like a mother and a person that has caught you in action doing that just shouldn't ask. Like they should just hug you. Like sometimes they're just things that you can't say to one, and instead you just have to physically support them.
Mm.
But she didn't, and I was just confused. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just answer with everything I don't know. But also, oh, I totally skipped over. But around this time, I was going. So during the summer, I would go to this camp called Concordia Language Camp, and it's in Minnesota. And my adoptive mother, she always encouraged me to go there every year to keep up my Russian. So I've I was going there for like up to 8 or 9 years. And then when I was like 15, I went there, and around that time, I think it was 14, or well, around that age,
Yeah.
I started cutting,
Mm.
and this girl that I met at camp, she was doing it too, and we kind of bonded over that. And she like told she's been doing it longer, so she was telling me like the deeper you go, the more like you'll feel better and this and that. So in a way, I did feel this euphoric feeling where I was like a little high, but it was the first time ever that like I truly like felt in control. Like it was incredible. But eventually I had to like cover these like cuts up on my wrists, and one of the counselors like at the camp, she noticed and she brought it attention to the leader of the camp. And the leader was like, we have to send you home if you're going to keep doing this.
Mm.
And you do have to talk to your like mother about this. So they call her, and I'm talking to her on the phone about this, and she's just asking me why, like why I was doing it. And I told her, I was like, I don't know, like I guess I kind of feel sad, like I don't know, like. And she was like, well, you need to stop or you're gonna come home. And I spent so much money on this, and she told me the price of it. And I'm like, okay, okay, like I'll stick it out, like I'll stop. And I mean, I didn't, but I became better at just like staying away from that girl that I was doing it with, because she did put a lot of attention on it. It's like she did want to get caught. So I was like by myself. And then um around 16, I told um I told my adoptive mother that her boyfriend at the time of when we lived in California, that he had touched me inappropriately in his car and threatened that he would kill my brother Marat if I told anyone. And I remember I told this to her around like midnight, maybe 1 or 2, and she just told me I was lying to her, that he would never do that. He is actually like the first man that she has been with since she got a divorce before she adopted me, and they were in love. And my brother Mara truly did treat him like he was his father, and she just didn't believe me. And I felt so stupid and lonely and just like a mistake, that I went into my bedroom and I took like a couple bottles of Tylenol. And I remember I had my cat, who's passed now, but at the time he was sitting right in front of me and just like staring at me. And that's when the guilt just hit me, and I felt like I wasn't the mistake, I made a mistake.
Mm,
And my cat, it just felt like I was abandoning him, and it was so wrong of me to do.
mm,
So I called my aunt, who I'm very close with. I called her and I told her what I did, and she's like, you need to wake her up, like wake my mother up. You need to wake her up and tell her to take you to the hospital. And I was like, no, she doesn't want to. She told me to go to sleep. She's like, Allie, give me the phone. And I just like didn't. I like passed out, and she spoke to her, and finally she got up, and then she came into my room. She's like, Allie, wake up. I put myself back into conscious, I
mm,
think, because I got up and we went to the hospital, and like I laid there in the bed, and the next thing I remember is her complaining to my doctor, saying, can I go home? And he was like, ma'am, your daughter's underage, she needs a guardian, you cannot go home. And
yeah,
she's like, but it's 5 o'clock in the morning, like I have a dog. Like she was just telling him what she had the next day. And
yeah,
he was like, man, please just be patient with us. Like we're just waiting on like the suicide person to come in to like talk to me. So the lady came in, she asked me like, do you want to kill yourself? This and this. And I was like, nope, nope. Like I was a very good liar, because
mm,
I had to lie a lot to my mom to get away with just stuff. So they were like, okay, she's fine. And before this, they like made me drink a ton of charcoal. And then I spoke to this lady. They let me leave. It was around 8 a.m. at this point, and I got dressed and I went to an opera with my grandfather, because I had a plan. I had a date with him, and it was weird. Like my mother told me, don't forget it's at 11, like, make sure you get ready and make sure you're not late. She acted like nothing happened.
Mm.
So I was like, okay. And I went along with it. And I remember I went to see Madame Butterfly with my grandpa, and just sitting there, I was like, I was just in shock still. I felt like, I don't know what it felt like, but it was unreal. It's hard to describe.
Yeah.
And
The shock of being alive, or
yeah, being alive, and that, um, how it just, everyone acted like nothing happened pretty
Mm.
much. Like, it wasn't shared with the nanny that we had in the house working with my brother Marat. Like, Laurel, my mother didn't talk about it. So pretty much, my therapist, who I was seeing at that point for like 2 years, I was very honest with her. And she's Russian and I'm Russian, so we had that like connection. And she knew that I wasn't okay. I wasn't safe under that roof. I wasn't safe in that house with my mother. And she suggested, for me to go to McLean Hospital in Boston. And pretty much, I didn't want to, but they told me it would only be for 3 months. So I figured, this is a great way to take a break from school, from my mother, from everything. And I went there, and it was a great place. We would have so many groups that would teach us different coping skills and mindfulness skills and how to get what you want, but in a healthy, strategic way. And I ended up being there for 8 months because my doctors did not feel like I should ever be in the same house as my mother. They knew that I would repeat the same behavior that I had repeated before. And like, my cutting situation still was like happening, and they knew about it. Um, and my mother wouldn't come to like the parent sessions and stuff. Sometimes she wouldn't make it. Meanwhile, all parents had to make it in order to like have process and like build those skills together with kids too. So, um, pretty much I did so much research to come back to New York, but be away from her. And while I was at McLean, I learned that I wasn't special. Meanwhile, I was thinking that I wasn't meant to be here. Meanwhile, I was thinking, oh, I'm the most loneliest person. No, there were other loneliest people too. There were other people that felt like they were aliens. There were other people that had more mental issues than I did. Like, there was this one girl that in the middle of the night, she was running up and down the hallway, screaming on top of her lungs, saying, I want to die, I want to die, with a red, like squeezable, like paint thing that I don't know where she found. It was either in her belongings or she went into like the art room, but she sprayed all of the walls in red. And it was so scary because I just remember hearing that in the middle of the night, but then the next morning, the walls were just red, like someone splattered blood on them. And she was just like so drugged out. And I mean, I just learned not just that, but that women are so important And I never had a great relationship with women because I just didn't have great women like idols that I could look up to and role models. So I made really good friends there, and that's where I met Meg, and we really hit it off. Um, we were like roommates, and she, in a way, became like my sister to me, but also like some sort of like other half that just like totally felt like I was completed because she would go out of her way every week to come and visit me. She at some point came every single day and would bring her like puppy that she had just gotten after she got discharged as her emotional support dog. And it was just so comforting. And when I met her and when we like built this friendship, she helped me with crying. As a kid, I was never able to like cry. I was very like numb and silent. And when I went to McLean, I never cried in front of anyone. I just felt like I needed to be a strong person and I needed to hold my guard high. Otherwise, like people would just hurt me. So Meg somehow helped me be vulnerable and cry like 24/7 with her. Whenever she would come visit, we would get this room at McLean on the girls' unit that's called the Fishbowl. And it's where some of our groups would be held, but it was mainly for like when parents would come visit their kids to have this like private area where the curtains closed. So we would always have that private area for ourselves, and it felt so like special because they did not offer that room to like any of the other kids. Like it was only just for me and Meg.
Yeah.
And eventually, um, I got discharged when I found this boarding school on Wall Street in New York. And it was like an international, it was mainly like for international kids. So like I was the only person from New York that was going there, and all of the rest were like from Japan or Australia or Barcelona. It was just all over the world these kids were coming from. So I was going there. I really wanted to go to an art school. So I was building my portfolio and I wanted to do something with photography. So when I was like 17, I built my own like photography business where I shot models and actors, and I was making good money and I was like helping them with their portfolios while they were helping me. And one of the actors that I met, um, we got romantically involved and we started seeing each other. And I think he was like 5 years older than me. So he was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was like 22 and I was 17. And he was very talented. And like whenever we worked together, we would always create like such good work. So that was um my actual like real first relationship that I had. Because is it okay if we like rewind a little bit?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So when I was like 15, well, from 14 to 15, I met this guy at that Russian camp.
Hmm.
His name was Michael. I met Michael at the Russian camp. We became obsessed with each other because we had similar like history. He was adopted too. And we started having this like long distance relationship. And then when I was 15, living in New York on Christmas Day, he just surprised me out of nowhere and showed up at our doorstep. And I was shocked, but my mother was so accommodating to him. She was like, come on in, you can stay on the couch. Eventually she found him a job as a sous chef on Wall Street. Eventually she helped him get an apartment. um, she was very, in a way, I believe, like had some sort of crush, because he did look like her ex-boyfriend who touched me. So one night, uh one summer night, we were all on Fire Island, and she invited Michael to join us, but there was an extra room, and she allowed us to sleep in the same bed. I was 15. And one night that we were there, she was, I believe, she must have been very high, but we were having a deep conversation about how she was very happy to see me happy with Michael, and how she was jealous to see me and Michael together, and that she was jealous of seeing us kiss each other. And
Mm.
she was just getting deeper and deeper, and I was just like confused how my own mother is like jealous of me. So I was like, okay, like thank you. Um, and eventually I get a text in the middle of my math class, like this is still a freshman year. Um, and it says from my mother, Michael just got arrested. Don't worry about it. Just come home when you're done. And I was just like, what? And I come home, and she's literally telling me that he had stolen $35,000 from her, and pretty much that's why he's locked up. And then she's questioning me, did you have anything to do with it? Did you know about it? This and this and that. I'm like, no. I was just like so shocked. The thing is, she didn't understand. She thought I was like lying, because she
Mm.
didn't get my emotions.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, she was shocked. My shock was different, because I was involved with this person. Like, I lost my virginity to this person. And um while we were together and before they caught him, he like bought a new computer, a new phone. And I remember I did ask him, like, how are you affording this? Because he was only a sous chef.
Yeah.
And he told me he won the lottery. And I believed him. Like, I
Yeah.
really believed him, because while we were in our relationship, we he would emotionally abuse me. There was at some point we went to a soccer game in New Jersey, and he drank too much, and he got really mad at me because I wanted a cigarette. And I talked him into allowing me to buy a pack of cigarette. And then when I came out and when I lit one, he grabbed the pack out of my hands and he just dumped it on my head. He's like, you want a cigarette? Here's your cigarettes. And I was just like so sad that that happened, that when we were waiting for the subway, I threatened and I told him, I'm going to jump. Like, I'm going to jump. Like, if you don't care about me, like, what's the point of living? Like, and he's like, do it, do it. I want to see you do it. Like, he was encouraging me to do it. And I
Mhm.
remember I was getting closer and closer. And then I don't, I think he pulled me away, or maybe it was someone else, but somebody like just pulled, like, just grabbed me and forcefully like pulled me back. And it was like, oh my God. And then um I ended up running away from him. Once we got on the subway, I just got off at one of the stops, and it was like his first time in New York, so he doesn't know where he's going, but I did. And I went straight home, and it took him like 3 hours to get back. And when he got back, he was so angry. I like ran into my little brother's room. I thought that he was sleeping in there, but nope, he was sleeping in my mom's room. And I was just standing there across the bed from him. He's like, you get over here. Like, why would you do that? Like, that was so selfish of you. Why would you just like leave me? And my mother was standing there in the doorway watching us argue, as he was on the other side of the bed and I was like on the other, just trying to like get away from him. He grabs my little brother's like lamp like stand thing that was beside the bed on the bedstand, and he throws it at me, and she doesn't say anything. She's like, guys, guys, guys. I'm like, what? I'm like, stop it, like stop, this is embarrassing. Eventually he stopped, but it was odd to like just see her kind of be like slow about it. And she still let him stay with us like that night. um but yeah, that was like my first relationship that I had. So then when I started dating this actor guy, Mark, um it was just like I immediately fell into it like so deeply and like seriously, and he was a little older, so I thought like he knew more and better. And when I turned 18, I I was like living with him by then pretty much. Like I moved in after a couple of months of dating him, and my mother let me. She thought it was fine. She's like, go ahead. She would let me come home, take some food, and then bring it back to his place. And he didn't have money. So I would support a lot of our like eating out or groceries, because my mother would give me like a $500 like monthly allowance. So, or maybe it was weekly. I don't remember. I think it was weekly, but the money that she was giving was going into the food at the beginning. But then he introduced me to cocaine, and I was like, wow. And I became so addicted. Like our entire relationship was just, it was based off cocaine. And I became very close with his mother. I met his family. I traveled to St. Louis to be more in the family with them and like get to know them. And yeah, he would be coming to my family events that like my family would throw, but I would never really like come back to my mother's house ever once I moved in with him. And my addiction ended up getting kind of out of control, where we got into a fight one night and I just started pulling my hair out. And it was so scary. And I remember calling my mother and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, please, I need help. Like, I really need to go to rehab. And during this relationship, my like Mark, he had cheated on me and I let it go. He would have these like anger burst out of nowhere, and I would just let it go. But then like one night he just like didn't come back home after I came to like a very big show opening that he did, and I told him like I'll see you at home, and he never showed up. And then the morning he shows up with like bloody knuckles, and he told me that he got angry and he started just punching the wall in the subway. And I was just like why? And it was just crazy to be around him whenever he would get angry and I would see blood. It just didn't make me feel okay. So that was like kind of the last straw. And I ended up going to rehab in Florida. And I was there, I'd probably say maybe like 2 months. And then they ended up kicking me out because they said I was a distraction for the men. They literally like, okay, I would pass notes with them during groups and stuff, but I would never start anything. And I would be passing notes maybe with like 5 to 6 different guys, but that would be the only fun that I would like truly get out of being in this rehab. So they said I was a distraction, and they transferred me to uh I, I think um yeah, they transferred to Mississippi, and I was there for a while. And while I was there, I completed all of their stages, the first stage, the second to the third, where I lived in a house with like one other girl, but we were still on the property of the rehab. But we're allowed to leave off campus in her car and go do whatever. my roommates always ended up getting high and getting kicked out. So I had a lot of different people that would come in and out. But from my experience at McLean with these girls, I had like a want and like a need to build a relationship with different women. And these women would age from their 20s to their 60s. So it was pretty fun to be around all ages. While I was there, I started getting involved with the husband of the owner who ran the rehab, and pretty much it was more like there were over like 15 girls on the property, but he would always like choose me to pick up and like spin around or take me off campus to go get food. And he is allowed to do that because he's like the other owner. So I just felt special, and like this type of like daddy like relationship, and then eventually it expanding to like kissing. It just totally, I felt on top of the world. I was like, maybe one day I'll own this rehab. Like I was just dreaming. And pretty much once I completed all of the stages on the property, there was this fourth stage where you go off the property and you live in a house, but a house now that's across from other men and other boys. And like you live in this house with one other girl, and you can leave whenever you want. You just have a curfew. You have like a 10 p.m. curfew. You can do whatever you want, just stay sober and come back by curfew. So yeah, this man would still come over to this side of the block now to come and visit me and like let me get in his motorcycle. Like it was crazy. His wife never found out, and like people started to think they were sleeping together, which is when he like stopped coming around to see me. But I was sober for an entire year, and that's where I picked up actually my cigarette habit, which lasted up to, so I was like 18. It lasted up to age of like 23. I was so addicted. I would smoke a carton a week because these rehabs literally have a specific dedicated place for you to go and smoke your cigarettes. And after every single group, you would have like a 15-minute break to go and smoke a cigarette. Like it's something that they wanted you to do. Like they would make special trips for you to just go and buy a few cartons of cigarettes to last you a month. Like it was disgusting. But yeah, I smoked a whole year and was sober for it. And then I stayed in touch with Meg throughout my entire like rehab experiences. She helped me with my online life because they would take our like phones away and stuff, so you couldn't really post. And I would need to buy like disposable like phones and stuff to like talk to her and tell her like what to post. And then when I went to the rehab in Mississippi, I kept my phone because where they kept me, I had to like get completely like naked and give up all my things. And then I had like one of the disposable phones from the other rehab that I was using. And I lied. I was like, yeah, this is my phone. Take this phone. And I kept my real one. So I was talking to Meg throughout the entire thing. And then one night she was having like issues with her boyfriend, and she was just like so down. And no matter what I said, it was like just tears, just tears, just tears. And then I'm like, come on, just like make it through tonight. Like that's it. Like, please. She's like, okay, like I will. And like my gut was like, no, but I remember we had a curfew. this was while I was on the premises, like, of the property. So, like, I had to be very careful. Otherwise, they pull you back levels. So if they caught me with my
Mm.
phone, I would start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I was out back and they were calling me. They're like, Allie. And I came back in and then I was texting throughout the night, eventually fell asleep. Next morning, I get a message from one of her sisters, and they were like, I'm so sorry, but like Meg Meg passed away. And I
Wow.
just lost it. I was so angry. I was so sad. I ran to one of my closest friends who was like 50 with like 3 children. I woke her up. It was like so early in the morning. I woke her up. I was just crying. I couldn't talk. I was just crying. Eventually, the counselor pulled me up and she was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Like, I just couldn't talk. And then they put me into my therapist's room. My therapist just sat with me there for like an hour while I was just crying. And then I just going through the process. And I told her, and she was like, I'm so sorry, like this and this. Um, are you still okay to have a phone session with your mother at like 3 today? Because we had an appointment with her, like a therapy
Yeah.
appointment. And I was like, yeah, like sure. And um my mother knew Meg. So like I just like couldn't wait to tell her. And when we were on the phone, she was like, before like we begin, I just wanted to let Allie know that we are selling our house upstate and I got rid of her stuff. And my therapist was like, what do you mean by you got rid of her stuff? And she was like, well, we needed to make some more room and um pretty much her stuff is all gone. I donated it. She got rid of every single belonging that I ever had, my t-shirt, shoes, pictures, my jewelry, my earrings that I've had since she adopted me that were my birth mother's earrings. Um, any piece of Meg that I had, like, she just got rid of everything. Like I was dead pretty much. It's like she was getting ready. And I was like, just more tears. And then
Mm.
my therapist, Leslie, she's like, okay, maybe we should like reschedule this. And I was like, no, like we're not rescheduling this. I'm like, why would you do this? Like, I just went off on her. I'm like, this is so irrational of you. Like, you know, I was going to be coming back home. Like, I was just here trying to get better, trying to learn more. Why? And she was like, sweetheart, like you're starting a new life there. You can get new, fresh stuff there. Like, that's where you're gonna be for now. And I was like, okay. And then my therapist was like, Allie has something to tell you. I tell her, Meg died yesterday. And she literally, that's when I lost full like respect for my mother because it was just so cold. It was truly so cold. She was like, oh, oh, well, sweetheart, it happens. You just have to get over it. And I was like, "Ah, are you kidding me?" And that's when I got up and I left. I got up, I left.
Yeah.
I went to my room, I started packing, and everyone was like, where are you going? I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I was in the middle of like the woods and I don't know what I was going to do, but I had some friends already out there that I made through like groups and work because I had a job. I was working in retail. So I called my friend and he picked me up and I just left and he like hosted me for a couple of days and then he helped me get a U-Haul to move the rest of my stuff out of this rehab spot. And then yeah, they were trying to tell me that because they couldn't control. It was so weird. But since my emotions were like everywhere, they were suggesting this session that we were having with Laurel, they were going to introduce the suggestion of my other therapists from other groups that they wanted to send me to Texas now to an all women's rehab. And I was just like, no way. Like, I'm not going to another rehab. Like, my life is over. Like, I want my life to be over. And I quickly left all my stuff at my friend's house. I was like, I don't care what you do with it, but I'm going back to New York right now. And pretty much, I was like 20 now, and I flew back to New York, and I just went on a bender. I was every single day just doing drugs. Every single day I was partying, and eventually I got tired of it, and I reached out to Meg's family, who kindly took me in, and they provided shelter, and they let me live on my own in the oldest daughter's apartment. And they really just like gave me all the love and support, but I just could not get off my feet and like actually go get a job and actually go feed myself. Like, I was just eating cup of noodles morning and night, and like in the middle of the day, like I would buy like huge box of it, and I would just live on that because I was just so depressed.
Mm.
And eventually, I was also still cutting then, but they had to sell the apartment because the oldest daughter um, found a boyfriend. They moved in together, but they allowed me to stay in this beautiful house that they got, and I had my own bedroom, and I was watching over their dog while they were at work. And it was really hard for me to stay with them because every single day I just felt like Meg was there, but she wasn't. Like, I couldn't
Mm.
see her. So I would be just like so sad, and like every single day just like cutting. And I eventually felt super bad, and I moved out, and I started kind of living in and out between like my boyfriend, who I met at the time, and between my other friend. So I was like living in their dorm rooms, switching between them. And I couldn't really handle the party scene at some point. So I went to live with my friend in Boston, who I also met at McLean. And her family took me in. It was her brother, and her mom and dad, and they lived in this like beautiful little house. And I had my own room, and the mother would always cook every night, and the mother would always like check in with Isabella. And like the father too was just so genuine and kind. Like, it was a type of like perfect family that I again was living in, that I've always wanted to be part of. So it was like, wow. And I was getting it. And I was so grateful to them. And at some point I was like, I wanna get better. Like, I'm done with this lifestyle. So I went into rehab again, but this time in New York, in Williamsburg. And I think I was like 22, and it was fine. Um, I ended up getting kicked out, not because I got high, but because I missed the meeting, and they were so strict. And that was like the last straw, when my mother was just like, I'm done. I'm done with you. You can do whatever you want. I'm done. I'm not paying for anything. Like, she cut me off totally. And I was like, okay. And one of my friends from my rehab in Mississippi, she was living in Chinatown, and she took me in, and she really we bonded together because we both had really messed up mothers, and her mother died. And she has been very upset about her mother's death, which is why I met her in the Mississippi rehab, because she just started drinking after that death. So I was there for her on so many different levels that she just started treating me like her sister. So she let me live there rent free for like half a year, and then she encouraged me to get a job. So I started working retail, and I started making money, paying rent. I was good. And then I wanted therapy really badly. I wanted my old therapist that I was seeing when I was like 15, the Russian one. And um, she is out of pocket. And my mother did not like that, even though she does have money, but she did not want to pay out of pocket. So I told my aunt that I'm super close to, I told her what I wanted and needed, which was my therapist, but my mother didn't want to pay for it. So my aunt got my grandmother on board and everyone else in the family. They were like, let's all split it. She needs it. So I started seeing a therapist, my therapist, and then she suggested I have a life coach. So I got a life coach. And through the life coach, that's how I started speaking to my mother again after she had cut me off and after I haven't spoken to her in like over like 2 years or so. And yeah, my life coach helped me get an apartment that my mother was willing to pay for. I like stopped going out. I got a job that wasn't in retail. It was like cat sitting for like this business. And I was working every single day, and I was working so much. And like at the end of the month, my paycheck was like 3 grand. And that was like hard earned money that I made without going out during the night and without drugs and without anyone's help. It was incredible. And um yeah, that's when I was like, my goal now is to not have a roommate and to live on my own and to keep making bank. And of course, to always stay in therapy too. So yeah, I um I still work on the side for this cat company, but starting there, I found skills and more knowledge about cats where I put it on like Craigslist, and I started offering my services, and then got few clients, and then word by mouth it grew, and now I have like over like 50 clients, and my business literally grows by the day. And yeah, I'm just like super happy, and I still put DBT into like my everyday life. And I always have to remind myself that like you're not special, like you're like everyone else, you're just a little bit unbalanced, but it is possible to find balance. Everyone has not so great days. And yeah, I just try to stay very like positive after dealing with my best friend's death. It changed my entire perspective of living, um, and always having hope. And yeah, just having um, a positive attitude and sharing it with other people and helping other people be up. Like I just truly go out of my way to help others because it's hard just not to not just to lose someone, but to just live and to be alive. It's a lot of work, and it's worth it because at the end of that work, there is that feeling of I did that. So Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my story.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ellie. And, before I start asking questions, I just want to say, uh, how strong you are and, the things that you've been through, and continued to stay strong despite them. It's quite amazing hearing that from the other end. For a lot of people, they probably wouldn't have made it through, like, even a third of what you've been through. And the fact that you remained resilient through all that is quite amazing. And thank you for your honesty in describing so many different experiences that have happened to you, and you know just being open to sharing your story. I think I and the listeners really appreciate that. You know, um, I guess so. Before I go back, just for the listeners, where do you feel like your mental health is today? How would you describe it? Do you feel like it's in a more positive space?
Yeah, I think so. I I have I have down days. I don't specifically love using the word bad or good. I like to think in a way of rational or irrational. So sometimes things are just a little off, but I don't focus on that. Like I said, like if there's a person that's negative, I not associate myself with them or I walk away. I truly disconnect myself from the negative or the process that's going to get you into the negativity of it, um, which is why I actually don't speak to my mother often. We only speak like once a month because she does trigger that anger in me, and I'm not an angry person, but she also triggers the sadness and like the little Allie in me that still wants a mother, but she knows it's not possible. And that's
Yeah.
okay because some people that are sick, some can't get unsick because the sickness is it's real. Depression is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, a lot of your story, early on at least, is in the orphanage. I'm curious, from your perspective, how should they be run or are there, like, you know, better methods to them being run? How would if you were in charge, how would you, or what changes would you make based on the experience you had?
I would say they shouldn't like overpack the kids in one room. Like the way that they were doing it truly felt like they were hurting us. Like when you herd the cows one way to like I don't know what it's called, but like where they get killed and turned into meat. Like that's how it felt like I was in. So maybe they should have more places so they could just fit all these kids in them. Um, but the orphanage that I was in, and from other stories from other orphans, my opinion would be they need to be more sympathetic at these kids because they don't know their story. Most of them are coming from some very abused homes, and the workers there just like don't have that. They're just there to make money pretty much. And when I did share the story that happened to me with one of them, I just remember they excused it. They were like, forget about it. Like, don't talk about that. They would just shut everyone down. Um, so yeah, there wasn't much growth for these kids or even a clear understanding of what's happening next or what's happening to me tomorrow. It was always just a question of, will I be okay? So just more safety, more love. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, I think that there were a lot of events that happened early on in your childhood, learning about your brother being poisoned, seeing your sister, you know, get murdered essentially. Um, I don't know if this is a fair question, but like, as you look back on that, what would you tell little Allie? Or, is there anything you can tell in terms of processing all that?
I would say maybe you're going to be okay. This too shall pass. Honestly, any of those affirmations that people say in the morning, if she could hear that in that moment from someone, I think it could have put more of, this sounds kind of weird, but like in my perspective, I think it could have put more of an ease on the story, because the way that I remember is just so tense and like scary that if someone said it's okay, like this will be okay, I would have more of a comfort. But I didn't really get that. So the story was what stuck to me, not the comforting thing that someone may have could have said.
You had an unfortunate instance of multiple, you know, authorities figures or parent type figures, not listen to you um when you would tell them certain things, right? And obviously that is a, not a it's a terrible quality in a parent figure. Unfortunately, you're as you've kind of alluded in the fact, that you're not special in the sense of this is happening, worldwide. um I'm curious, what would you say to someone in that, situation of, you know um they're telling their mom or dad that they're being sexually abused or something like that, and the parents just not believing them or dismissing them, or, how would you handle that, um if you were to think about it now?
I would say tell someone else. Like, I think as kids, we so are dependent on our parents and like on the people that are older than us in our home, but mainly on our parents because like who we're learning from. So tell someone else, because whenever I told anything to my mother when she shut me down, I believed her. And like, to be honest, I'm still trying to find my voice and like find ways of talking about certain stuff that like I just was so shut down and that I can't even talk about it. Like I still I still haven't grieved like about my best friend's death. I still can't talk to really anyone about it because those words that came out of my mother's word, like to get over it, it just made me feel so small. Like I really should get over it. So
Mm.
yeah, just talking to other people truly does help. Talking to not just your therapist, anyone that is willing to listen. Like, I know that's putting yourself and your vulnerability at risk, but I'm willing to be vulnerable with anyone that shows interest in hearing what I have to say. And it's not really about how will they react. It's to me, it's will they hear me and will they care? And like if they didn't offer neither of those, I move on. Like I know that people aren't perfect and not everyone will be in your life. So it's like I don't take it to heart. I actually find my voice by doing that and by sharing more with other people that aren't the elders of me and that aren't my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be a similar answer for you, but again, you've faced situations where parents of you were, high or drunk or, whatever it is, as you look back on your journey, if there's someone out there that's dealing with a parent like that, are there any strategies in kind of coping or dealing with that?
Um,
These are tough questions, by the
I mean,
way. I just like
yeah,
so feel free to say these are questions a lot of society hasn't been able to answer. I
right.
just yeah.
I would like to start off by saying to whomever that's going through that, like, it's not your fault. Um, at one point, I started thinking, like, was she doing that because of me? Like, was I like just a bore or like a drag in her day? Um, but no, it wasn't my fault. I would suggest just, I guess, doing what I did, just like isolating myself from what I couldn't get because she was high half the time. She wasn't there. So I had to go and create my own ways of enjoying myself and putting my attention on the nannies that I would have and finding joy in other ways than just trying to get attention from my mother or from whoever's high. Yeah.
Yeah. The cutting that started around 13, obviously at least my interpretation is you were probably coping with some pain or anger or something like that. You know, given your experience with, treatment centers and things like that, obviously there are other, girls and probably boys out there that are using that as a mechanism too.
Hmm.
Um, what would you say to, a 13-year-old using that as a coping mechanism?
Um, it's not a healthy one. Uh, Maybe, I mean, I do regret doing it now that I'm here right now. Um, there's so many other options of coping with your emotions or coping with whatever happened to you in the moment or in the past. You can scream into a pillow, you can take a cold shower, you can go on a run, you can go outside and scream. Like, you can read a book, you can paint, you can write some angry words down. There's just so many different options out there. Talk to someone, call someone. Like, there's hotlines out there now that weren't out there when I was suffering with depression. There's so much more like help out there that I just wish it was like that when I was younger because now they have posters and like different numbers they easily you can dial and you just get connected with someone. Um, yeah, just I say don't hold it inside. And when you do cut, you're still holding it inside because you're carving that into you. So you're just putting that pain back into yourself. You're not actually letting it out in any way. You're just put it's like I don't know how to say it in English. Um uh like it's like doing this, it's a definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and expecting different results.
Yeah.
It's truly insane because nothing will
Yeah.
ever change by that action. um so yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very good. Different use alternate coping mechanisms. Uh, eating disorder is something, you talked about seeing the image of other, females or models and that playing a role into why you got into that. Clearly that's something that continues to be, a challenge for girls growing up today. Uh, what would you say to someone out there that was doing some of the similar things that you were doing, whether that's, not eating anything at all or throwing it up or whatnot?
um I'd say you are not what you see, because with eating disorders, it truly is like, even though you may be skinny, like you really do see yourself as fat. So it's us lying to ourselves. So I guess disconnect from that thought, disconnect from that image. Um, if you don't accept yourself, then try other styles of yourself. Change your entire look. Dabble in different colors, different clothes. Like, don't just make yourself suffer in order to fit into something cute, to fit into something that's trendy. Um, that's another way of having control, is to try other things out than just to stick into one forceful way that you're used to by not eating or other ways. Um, yeah.
Yeah. You had a couple of really tough experiences of, you know, eh, however we characterize it, sexual abuse, assault, um, things of that nature with respect to, I'll call them, somewhat related family members, whether it was your birth mom's, one of the men that she was seeing, or whether it was your adopted mom's boyfriend or whatnot. Those are situations that you as a, child don't really have a lot of control over. But unfortunately, our society continues to deal with that. To the person being abused today, as you look back on your journey, is there something you would tell them? I mean, uh, whether it's, reporting it to someone, which obviously, given the circumstances is very tough, um, or, maybe using therapy to not repress it, or is anything come to mind in terms of that?
Um, I mean, what helped me was finding other people and groups that you could talk about it in, where other folks had the same experience, and pretty much like AA, but not. And I mean, like you said, reporting it is hard, but I do think the more that you talk about it, the more that, the more like power you actually get back that you actually lost, or that you feel like you lost. I'll say that. Um, because these experiences, they're not just an experience or like a tragic thing. It's like it's a piece of you taken away. It's something you did not say yes to. It's not something that you were okay with happening. It's like you were forcefully remade. to just like totally be open and like, so by putting more um action into talking about it, and to remembering that it wasn't your fault, and that what happened, it's not okay, and that should never happen to anyone, it does give you a little comfort in not just sitting with it and thinking the opposite, because our mind plays tricks on us so many times that it's up to us to be like, wake up, hello, don't forget this. So yeah.
Yeah. You talked a couple times, whether it was McLean or some of the, Mississippi, being in different treatment centers. I'm curious from your point of view, who should go to a treatment center? I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to acknowledge their mental health problems. And so they never take that step. But you talked about, the important learnings that you made in terms of coping and in terms of, meeting other people, battling the same things and, having a camaraderie in that, I think, uh, meeting Meg and meeting others. Um, is there a way to know, like, hey, like I should probably go to a treatment center?
uh I would say, I mean, yes, I mean, of course there's, if you're hurting yourself, like you should definitely go to a treatment center. If you're abusing drugs and you're acting out on them, physically hurting others and yourself, you should definitely go. Um, but if um, I thought you were going to phrase your question in a different way, where you were going to say, is there a way of knowing like if you need the help? I thought that's what you were going to say.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean,
Well,
yeah, essentially that. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
how do you know? Because they don't know the learnings that you know, right?
right,
That's my point is you have the hindsight of understanding what McLean teaches,
right. Well,
right?
I want to say, if no matter if it's McLean or Rehab or any sort of like program, if the help is offered to you, take it, because there are so many people out there that can't afford it, or it's filled up, or they can't make it. Like when I came back into the city, I started doing like DBT groups, and it was insane. There were people that were waiting a year, a half a year, 2 years to get into this group. And it was a public like group. So there were a ton of different people coming in. There was a waiting list to learn about DBT. Like, it just shocked me. Um, but yeah, that's, no matter if you're from 1 to 10 how badly you're using drugs or how badly you're cutting, it's like, no, if you got offered the help, definitely take it, because even if you're not as bad as others, or even close to being as bad as others, then you will at least learn some extra stuff about those people, so then you don't end up like those people, and you will learn those people's skills that you probably don't have in your toolbox. Like, that's the thing, like so many people think that they don't need to do something because they may already know it or may already have it, but it's like, no, no, no matter where we go, no matter like what people we see, there's always a lesson behind it. And I Like, I am so grateful and, like, truly blessed to have gone to these different rehabs and to have gone to McLean, because I do think that because I'm not, um, a type of person that's, like, so closed up anymore, I do think that all the stories that I heard and all the people that I met did help me to this day to be the person that I am, to not be doing those drugs, to not be cutting, to not suppress my eating, because I've seen where those people are now and I see where those people were then, and some people didn't even make it to here. So it's like, do take the help, help yourself. There's always either a lesson or a blessing behind it. It's worth it. Like, you're worth it. Put the work into yourself.
I, you mentioned having trouble crying and tending to be pretty numb. That feeling, and I don't want to make any generalizations, but it can often happen because you're overwhelmed, right? You're dealing with a lot of things, or a lot of traumas have happened in your life. I'm curious, have you been able to get better with that? And if so, like, what advice would you give to someone who is unable to cry, or because they've just faced so many abuse or traumas, or they've become numb as well?
Um, I would suggest to write about it. I have learned that, so I started keeping a journal once I was adopted, so around like 9, and then turned from like Russian to English, and I still write in it. And I learned that some of the stuff that I wrote down back then, I I totally like forgot about it because I didn't want to like talk about it. And it made me feel even more overwhelmed, like remembering it. But then going back again and again and reading it, it made it easier for me to deal with it and to live with it. Um, but again, also talking about it with your therapist always helps, because knowing that there's another person out there with your story who still accepts you is like, it does make me feel like worthy pretty much. Yeah. So I've been seeing the same exact therapist for the past like 10 years now. So she truly has helped me by always being there and always listening, and yeah, I tell her everything. It helps.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about, being addicted uh to drugs at certain points in your life. I'm curious, what advice would you have to someone in that situation today, who maybe, is trying to get to that point,
Mhm,
where they're off and they're not addicted, but they're, having a tough time?
mhm. I'd say take it easy, slow down, like, don't rush. It's not a race. You don't need it, you want it. Um, yeah, it's really hard to give anything else besides that, because addiction to anything, honestly, is really, really difficult. And I know people who have died multiple of times and came back to life, and they still, even after dying so many times, they still use and they still risk their life every single day. And again, it's just, it's really hard to say anything to those type of people, because they're just so like foggy with all the drugs and the feelings of I can't deal with this reality. I need to be high in order to do it. It's just they can't deal with the reality. How are they supposed to deal with the real person telling them that that's not healthy? It's like they'll only probably understand what you're saying if they're high. So yeah, just slow down, take it easy. Don't do too much of it. Chill out.
Yeah. Um, you know, I think you mentioned, or I guess even now, like I don't know if you're in a relationship or not, but entering relationships today, having faced so much trauma in your life, is there a way to like, how do you, I'm just curious, how do you approach relationship? Like, are you able to, tell things over time, or like, how have you approached that aspect of your life?
Uh so I'm not in a relationship, but I take it very slow. I learned that I cannot like be like hungry for it. My goal is to just accept whatever comes my way. And in the past I have been more like dominant over men and choosing who I want and pretty much like putting that into a go, but it never worked out because I would be too much of like the alpha, and it would just always end up with me just like breaking up with them, um, or them not being able to deal with me because do get sometimes, I'm working on it, but I do get very codependent emotionally, and I end up like future tripping and believing that it won't work out. And um yeah, I it's not my first priority right now. Like I know that I have to work on myself, and every day I'm working on myself. And I know that I can't be with anyone that isn't doing the same. Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about it a couple times, DBT therapy. Can you just elaborate on, how that's helped you and who you would recommend that to?
Uh, Dialectical behavioral therapy, I would recommend to everyone. I mean, their little definition behind it is like it's uh it's aimed towards borderline personality disorder people, but truly, it's they only say that because for borderline personality, it has such an like ill reputation because people like didn't believe it was real at the beginning, and which is why they created specific therapy to allow people to see that this helps for this thing. So I say it's meant for everyone truly because it helps you learn how to not just have like good morals, but to find these skills where you can speak to a person without being judgmental or allowing them to feel judgmental, and finding skills where you substitute your unhealthy ways with healthy ways of dealing with your emotions. And there's just a lot of like just Buddhist energy, and they just show you life isn't black and white, like there's middle to it. And Yeah, it's just lovely. I truly think if the entire world knew more about it or at least acted on it. I've introduced it to so many of my friends and they love it.
Mm.
Like they've bought workbooks and they've are doing little like worksheets in it. And they say like this has helped me so much in my relationship, their romantic relationship, their relationships with their mothers. Um, it's it's real magic and it's very easy to tap into it if you just open the book and read and be open to it and accept the skills because they're real and they do help. Yeah.
I'm curious, at least from my perspective, it seems like you're, in a good place in terms of, I guess professionally, you're happy or successful, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people that have been in your situation can't see that, right? Especially maybe if they've had a drug addiction or whatever, like they just can't see themselves finding, quote unquote success or being normal, or they don't believe they can do it. I'm curious, what would you say to someone that doesn't believe they can, be that, most positive version of themselves?
Yeah. Um I mean, I would say it gets better if if you have like a sibling or a loved one, like do it for them. Um but again, the the honest truth is like you have to do it for yourself. It's sorry, I'm very distracted by my cat right
You're
now.
fine. You're fine.
Um Yeah, I mean, it does get better. It's just those, I really think my teenage years and then the years up to my 20s were just like so hard because I wanted to just grow up because I felt like a grown up. So like I wanted to like do things that grown-ups did. Um so like honestly wait it out. Like wait until you're at least in your 30s or something before you make rash decisions. Um, yeah, there's this life is really worth living. It's just finding a way to live with it. And everything does happen for a reason, and everyone is here for a reason. So it's like instead of fighting with it or doubting it or finding other ways to escape it, like it's actually more interesting and truly like a thrill when you do find like the healthy ways of just going and living day to day without drugs or without abusing yourself or without being abused. It's like it's possible. Like it's possible you will find happiness. Like and if you don't, get an animal. They'll make you happy.
Yeah. This might be a similar answer, but I'm curious, for someone who may be suicidal or doesn't, have the energy or the wanting to keep going, do you have any pieces of advice for them?
Uh, please do. Like, do keep going. It does. I actually don't like when people say it gets easier, but it does get easier with the lessons and the things that you go through. Um, I guess I'd say it gets more flexible and you'll learn how to bend uncomfortably in order to find that joy and to get through that anxiety and use a healthy way to get through the anger. Like, nothing lasts forever. So, us, we're not going to be here forever, but while we have the chance, we may as well see how far we can get. And by cheating our way to death, that's not actually like, it's not fair. It's not being honest. You're not being truthful. And it will hurt other people if you do cheat and get out of here earlier than anyone else. And yeah, you'll break hearts, and it won't be a great way to leave something and so many beautiful things that were literally put into this world like you. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, Allie, we talked about quite a bit. Was there something you wanted to talk about that we didn't?
Mm, I don't think so.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Allie, I just want to, well, first, if you're open to it, if someone hears this and wants to reach out to you, is there like an email or something like that, um,
Yeah.
that they could reach you?
Yeah. They can reach me at ALYANAJOYCAT at gmail.com. So Aliana Joycat at gmail.com.
Awesome. And yeah, just from my perspective, I just want to thank you again, Allie, for being willing to talk about all these experiences and being open about it and sharing your lessons. Um, hopefully, uh, you know, someone out there can listen to this and maybe they're going through a tough time or a similar experience that you went to, and they can find hope and they can keep going through your lessons. And uh, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.